Today we're looking at Noodler's Lexington Gray. Hi, I'm Adam and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Noodler's Lexington Gray is a gray ink with some pretty decent hold on, I should say. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples, I put the ink into a different pen for a day, I then put it into a Levenger TrueWriter to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately dunk it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is there is a lot of permanence for this ink. Almost all of it stays in place. In fact, there's only the slightest hint of this like very light, I want to call it teal color, you know, maybe kind of a teal turquoise that pushes its way up. Almost nothing moves. The only way you really notice it is when you look at the one on the right that I let dry for 10 minutes. By looking at the color difference between the two pieces of paper, that's where you see that none of it moved the second time, and just how aggressive into the paper this ink can be. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. Now I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. The highlighter does not affect it, although the yellow of that highlighter looks a little bit darker than it normally would, which is strange, but I don't see any change in the writing. I see a little bit of change in the highlighter itself, but nothing on the ink. Makes it a good ink to use as a note taker. Water had no effect. It didn't even notice that it was there, which you would expect having seen that chromatography. Pen flush, same as water, nothing. Bleach, same as water, nothing. This is a very permanent there ink. Just test it in a more inexpensive pen before you go to your expensive pens. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Noodler's Lexington Gray has a viscosity of 2.47, making it almost average. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the extra fine and medium nib. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Noodler's Lexington Gray has an average dry time of 9 seconds, making it a fast drying ink, much faster than many marketed fast dry inks. Now that's because this ink is so aggressive getting into the paper. Now let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing sample consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at Clairefontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, sheen. It does offer some shading, and its shading is always in shades of gray. That's what makes this such a standout gray. It's never black. Look at the X. It gets super dark, but it's still gray. The Y becomes super dark, still gray. Top of the G, still gray, but very dark. Nice. Extra fine. No feather, spread, halo, sheen. We do get some nice shading throughout. The HE is very nice and dark compared to the T. Quick, starts dark, gets light, gets dark again. Brown starts light, stays light all the way to the N. Same with Fox, light all the way to the X. Really nice. 6 seconds to dry. Medium. No feather, spread, halo, sheen, and yes, we do get some very nice shading in here. We see it in a quick. It goes from dark to medium to light. Brown stays very light. Fox starts light and gets dark, and it happens like this all over the place. This is the standout best gray ink I have come across in terms of its color and performance. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium do show us color variation. We got it up here, and a smear test, you could recover this.
Tomoe River. No bleeding, minor ghosting because it is a very thin paper. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It does offer spots of shading. The N is a bit darker than the O. The T is darker than the G. We get it with the 1.1. We still get shading. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It still offers shade. In the T is lighter than the HE. The dot is dark on the quick, and the K is dark on the quick. Brown's very uniform in tone. Fox starts light and gets dark. Very nice. 10 seconds to dry. Medium. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and yes, the shading is still there. This ink doesn't care that it's on Tomoe River. It's going to shade anyway. It breaks all the rules. It took the rule book and said, not mine. It didn't care. Because look at this. Quick. Nice and light gets dark. Super dark at the K. Brown starts light, gets really dark at the X. Fox is, the is a very dark word. Over is a very light word. Only 13 seconds to dry. Breaking the rules at Tomoe River. Tomoe River wants a long dry time. Lexington Gray said, no, you don't. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium both show us some color variation. We got color variation. And the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared it on Tomoe River. Amazing. What about Rhodia? Rhodia has no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does give us shading. It gives us nice shading. The thing about this ink that I see is that no matter what nib I put it in or what paper it goes on, it's gray. It's not black. And it shades. Even if only a little, it shades. That's why people like this ink so much. And the smear tests show you the range of grays you're going to get. A lot of times the smear tests I don't like because they are really misleading. This one is not. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does offer shading. The X is much darker, the T is much darker, the apostrophe and the S are much darker. The Y is much darker. Very nice. Extra fine, no feather, spread, halo, sheen. We do still get shading. The E and the is much darker. The left side of the Q is much darker than the rest of the Q. The CK gets darker. The R is the darkest part of over. The O is very, very light. Nice. 7 seconds to dry. Medium, no feather, spread, halo, sheen. And yes, we still get shading. Great. A good shading gray ink that doesn't just say gray, black. It says gray, levels of gray. It doesn't just go gray, black. That's awesome. And the same type of shading that we got with the extra fine, and only 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us plenty of color variation, and we got it. The smear test, you could definitely recover it. Yellow Rhodia. Does the yellow paper affect this ink? Does it care? It has no bleeding and no ghosting. Now we expect that because it is still Rhodia. What happens to the tone of the ink? Absolutely nothing. It's such a rich color in the pigment of this ink is so good. It's opaque, so the yellow's not changing it. But does it hold up in a writing sample when with all of its other qualities? Well, the 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It still has shading. That apostrophe in the S is still darker. The X is still darker. The dot of the I is still darker. T and the N, darker. The right side of Y, darker. Beautiful. Extra fine, has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. Come here, bug. Got a single gnat in here. Driving me crazy. 7 seconds to dry. Great shading all over. The R in brown is very dark compared to the B and the O. The K is very dark and quick. The is a much darker word than the F for the extra fine. I just put Fs. I don't know why. 7 seconds to dry. Medium, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and yes, we get shading here. It didn't care about the yellow paper. Quick is a nice uniform gray tone that gets much darker at the K. Jumps, starts light and gets darker. P is very dark. S lightens up again. Over goes from very light to dark. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us color variation, and we got plenty of color variation. And the smear test, you could recover it. Great Franklin Christoph paper. Franklin Christoph paper gave us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gave no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It still gave us shading, because it's that good. It is that good in ink, because look at the X, super dark. Anytime you're going back over stuff, it is there. The S of Noodler's, very dark. The beginning of N of Noodler's, very dark. The extra fine, no feather, spread, halo, sheen. We do have shading. The shading is not as stark here. It's not as contrasty, but it is absolutely there. The K is much darker. The TH of the is darker than the E. In jumps, it starts very light and gets much darker all the way through. Over starts light and gets dark. The starts light and gets dark. Lazy starts dark, gets light, starts getting darker again, and only 3 seconds to dry. You get good shading on a very fast drying ink on this paper. Great stuff. And the medium, no feather, spread, halo, sheen. And yes, you still get to have your shading. The light to dark, quick, dark to light to dark. I'm not going to do it all, but it is all there. 4 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us color variation in both, and we get it. And the smear test, you can recover this with no problem. So hey, just for fun, what happens if you use onion skin paper? Now, if you don't know, onion skin's used for doing animations. You use a lot of different layers. It's like a tracing paper. It's just nicer to actually draw on and work on. It tends to be a bit friendlier than tracing paper. So we get no bleeding. Of course we get ghosting. You're supposed to be able to see through onion skin paper. You're supposed to be able to see through 5 and 6 layers at a time. So of course that's going to be there. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and I defeated it with the onion skin. It got no shading with the onion skin paper. Alright. Extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does have some shading. The K is darker than the rest of Quick. T is light, HE is dark. Lazy is a nice light tone, but the is a darker tone next to it. Over starts light and gets dark. 4 seconds to dry. On the medium, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and we did not get shading here. None here. The onion skin can defeat the shading of this ink. And that's all that I found. 5 seconds to dry. The scrubby of both, the extra fine shows us some color variation. We did get some color variation. The medium showed us none. We got none. And the smear test, you could still recover this if you smeared it while you were drawing at that point. And that's all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Noodler's Lexington Gray, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Being a very nice flat gray tone, I wanted something really kind of loud. And I chose Private Reserve's Cosmic Cobalt because this is a loud blue ink. Before I give my opinion on Noodler's Lexington Gray, I would ask if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. Now, what do I think of Noodler's Lexington Gray? I think this is the best gray ink going. Not only is it a very consistent gray, it offers some nice shading, which is really nice with this ink. Again, the permanence, the nice shading, and the fact that this is such a nice gray. Not a color I think I would run to normally. However, this has made me feel I really want a bottle of this ink. I really do. This is beautiful. Thanks for watching.